The plastic collection tray was empty when I placed my phone in it, which meant I had beaten the trap by exactly 12 seconds. 12 seconds before the first bell. 12 seconds before the proctor would ask for devices. 12 seconds before my classmates would lower their eyes, slide their phones into sleeves, shoes, pencil cases, blazer linings, and the hollow backs of expensive calculators while pretending they were innocent students walking into the most important ranking exam of our lives. My phone landed in the tray with a dull little tap, screen facing up, power button off. The cracked corner I had never bothered fixing catching the fluorescent light like a tiny broken tooth. The proctor, Mr. Voss, looked down at it, then up at me. His eyebrows moved as if he had been offered evidence before he had announced a crime. I smiled politely and said, "I want it logged before collection begins, sir." Behind me, the corridor went quiet in that sudden, hungry way crowds go quiet when someone does something they do not understand. In my first life, I had held onto that phone until the second warning bell because everyone did. We were told to switch them off and place them in numbered sleeves at the front desk, but the rule had become a joke at Halewick Academy. The top students kept backup devices because their parents expected ranks. The scholarship students kept them because they were terrified of being outscored by cheaters. The teachers looked away because perfect pass rates kept donors smiling. And I, stupid enough to believe silence was safer than being first, had followed the rhythm of the herd. By lunch, my name was attached to an encrypted message thread I had never opened. By sunset, my score was suspended. By the following Monday, the national merit list was published without me on it, and the same classmates who had copied answers from the Golden Girls' private feed stepped over my ruined reputation like it was mud outside the hall. So in my second life, I did not wait for rules to save me. I arrived before the bell, walked straight past the whispers, and handed over the one object everyone needed me to keep. Mr. Voss was a narrow man with silver hair combed so flat it looked painted onto a skull, and in my first life, I had hated him for being useless. He had watched my hearing with the tired expression of a clerk counting coins, never cruel, never kind, just professionally detached while my future was folded into a file marked candidate misconduct. This time, his detachment was exactly what I needed. Detached people liked procedures more than feelings. I slid my student card across the desk with 2 fingers and said, "Please seal it with my candidate number, time, and your signature. I have not connected to any network since entering the center." His eyes sharpened. "Miss Arden, collection has not commenced." "I know," I said, keeping my voice soft enough for the students behind me to strain to hear. "That is why I am requesting a voluntary early surrender." Someone behind me laughed under her breath. I knew the sound without turning. Serena Vale always laughed like she was trying not to, as if the world kept accidentally amusing her. In every classroom, every ceremony, every scholarship interview, she wore the same expression: golden patience, golden pity, golden certainty that everyone would eventually arrange themselves around her glow. She had been the Academy's perfect daughter, the girl whose notes were praised even when I wrote them, whose speeches made teachers cry even when she had copied my drafts, whose little mistakes were called pressure, while mine were called character flaws. In my first life, she had held my hand outside the same examination hall and whispered that if I was nervous, I could keep my phone with me until the last second because she would remind me to surrender it. Then she had stepped away at precisely the moment the inspectors entered, and my number had appeared on a device log linked to 26 outgoing messages during the exam. I never proved she had used a clone SIM. I never proved she had borrowed my phone the night before, just to call her mother, and copied my authentication key. I never proved anything, because proof arrives late for girls without family names. This time, proof was going to arrive early, sealed, time-stamped, and sitting in a plastic tray before Serena had time to smile. The corridor outside hall, smelled of rain-damp uniforms, mint gum, and the expensive citrus perfume Serena always sprayed on her wrists before public victories. Candidates leaned against the walls pretending to revise, but no one was reading. Every eye kept sliding to the sealed doors, the notice board, the proctor's table, and finally to me. I could feel their confusion growing teeth. Why was I surrendering my phone before anyone asked? Why was I asking for a record? Why was I not standing with Serena's group beside the marble column where the best students gathered like saints in a painting? My hands were steady because I had rehearsed this moment for 6 years in a life I no longer owned. Not calmly, not gracefully. At first, I rehearsed it while crying into bathroom sinks, while deleting old photos because seeing my academy uniform made me sick, while reading articles about merit fraud and exam collusion at 2 in the morning and whispering Serena's name until it stopped sounding human. Then, after grief hardened into something useful, I rehearsed it like litigation.
Timeline.
Witnesses. Chain of custody. Device state. Authentication logs. Voluntary surrender. Independent signature. I had learned the ugly language of institutions because institutions only listened when pain wore a badge and carried paperwork. Mr. Voss lifted my phone with latex-gloved fingers, placed it into a transparent evidence pouch, wrote my candidate number across the label, and paused over the time box. 7:58, I said before he could check the wall clock. He looked at the digital clock beside the door and nodded. 7:58.
He signed. I signed.
He tore off the carbon copy and handed it to me. Behind me, Serena stopped laughing. That tiny silence was worth 1,000 apologies I would never receive. I folded the receipt once, slid it into the clear pocket of my admission folder, and stepped aside. "Thank you, sir." Mr. Voss looked past me at the line of students suddenly pretending not to have watched. "Devices will be collected in 2 minutes," he announced. Powered off, no exceptions. The corridor shifted. 100 futures rustled at once. Serena approached me as if we were still friends. That was one of her talents, walking across a battlefield like she had arranged flowers there. Her hair was tied with a cream ribbon, her blazer fitted perfectly, her lips tinted the color of ripe cherries. She lowered her voice so only I could hear, which meant she wanted everyone to know she was being kind without letting them hear the blade. "Leora, are you all right?" That was a little dramatic. In my first life, that sentence would have made me blush. I would have apologized for making a scene. I would have explained myself, offered too much, handed her a rope and watched her twist it around my throat. This time, I looked at her ribbon instead of her eyes and said, "Just following rules." "No one surrenders early unless they are worried," she said, smiling. What would I be worried about? Her smile flickered, not enough for the corridor to notice, but enough for me. "People might think you are trying to look innocent." I let my gaze drift past her shoulder, where 3 members of her study circle were palming devices with the clumsy confidence of amateurs pretending to be criminals. Jessa slipped a rose gold phone into the lining of her pencil case. Mara pressed something thin under the elastic bandage on her wrist. Talia bent to retie a shoe that had no loose lace. "Looking innocent is useful when someone has spent years making you look guilty," I said. Serena's eyes cooled. For half a second, the golden girl disappeared, and I saw the person I had seen at the end of my first life. Irritated, cornered, offended not by harm but by inconvenience. Then she laughed lightly and touched my sleeve. "You always speak like you are in a courtroom. Relax. Today decides ranks, not morality." "For some people," I said, "there is no difference." The first bell rang before she could answer. It rolled through the corridor, deep and metallic, and every hidden phone seemed to grow heavier in every hidden place. Mr. Voss stood. 2 additional proctors opened fresh trays. The official collection began. The real trap was not the phones. Phones were too obvious. In my first life, the academy had known for months that students were smuggling devices, but knowledge was not the same as action. Halewick only moved when the National Ranking Board threatened to revoke its examination license after suspicious answer patterns appeared across 3 consecutive cohorts. The board's auditors did not care that Serena's father funded the new science wing. They did not care that the headmaster had built his career on photographs of smiling merit scholars. They cared about statistical impossibilities, identical wrong answers, encrypted Wi-Fi bursts from inside sealed halls, and a private answer feed that had been mirrored through candidate devices during live exams. In the life before this one, the auditors arrived too late for me. They found enough to destroy my reputation, but not enough to untangle who had used whose device. I became convenient collateral. The scholarship girl with a phone log, no lawyer, and no family foundation protecting her. But when I woke up again 3 weeks before the ranking exam, I remembered something everyone else forgot because they had not lived past the scandal. The board had not discovered the feed during the exam. They had discovered it because one candidate, terrified after being threatened with expulsion, submitted anonymous screenshots 2 days earlier. That meant the auditors were already watching today. The building was already under a silent integrity protocol. Every network ping, every Bluetooth handshake, every unauthorized device ID inside Hall A was being mapped before the first paper touched a desk. All I had to do was remove my phone from the map before Serena tried to place me back on it. The collection trays moved down the line. Students dropped devices with theatrical sighs, as if surrendering phones for 3 hours was a human rights violation. Some gave up old cracked backups they had bought precisely for this ritual. Some handed over phones with dead batteries and kept the real ones warm against their skin. I watched Mr. Voss notice more than he showed. He did not confront anyone. That, too, told me the audit was live. A normal proctor would search bags, warn students, threaten penalties. An auditor let the crime complete itself. Serena surrendered a white phone with a glittering case and a wallpaper of her mother kissing her forehead after last year's award ceremony.
Perfect. Public.
Harmless.
False.
In my first life, that white phone had sat in the tray, while her real device ran the feed from inside a pocket sewn beneath her skirt waistband. She had called it her emergency tracker when caught 2 years later during university entrance interviews. Her father had called it anxiety management. The board had called it unauthorized communication equipment and banned her from national examinations for 5 years, but by then my life was already ash. Today, I watched the slight stiffness in her right side as she walked toward Hall A, and I knew the device was there again. She still trusted the same hiding place. Of course she did. People who win by cheating rarely become creative. They become entitled. Serena paused at the threshold and looked back at me. It was not fear in her eyes yet. It was curiosity. She was trying to decide whether I had discovered her plan or merely stumbled into safety by accident. I smiled at her like a fool.
It helped.
Cruel people relax when they believe you are lucky rather than intelligent. Inside Hall A, the desks were arranged in long columns under pale lights that made every face look washed and guilty. My assigned seat was C22, near the center aisle, far enough from Serena to make direct copying impossible, close enough that she could still perform concern if needed. In my first life, C22 had been a cage. The inspectors later claimed my device must have been active near that section because the strongest signal bounced off the ceiling panel above my row. They never found the device. They never found Serena's cloned key. They never believed me when I said my phone had been in the tray. Collection records can be imperfect, the disciplinary chair had told me, eyes fixed on the file instead of my face. Candidates are responsible for all devices registered to them. So this time, I made the collection record perfect. I placed my admission folder flat on the desk, carbon receipt visible beneath the transparent cover. I set out 2 pens, 1 pencil, 1 eraser, a clear water bottle, and nothing else. No watch. No hair clip with metal parts. No lucky charm from my aunt. Nothing Serena could ask to borrow, drop, switch, or hide. Across the aisle, Darius Finn adjusted his glasses and gave me a nervous look. In my first life, Darius had been one of the few who apologized after the scandal, but apology without action is only a softer kind of cowardice. He had known about the feed. He had used it once. He had stopped when Serena raised the price. That was not morality, that was budgeting. I looked away. The second bell rang. Mr. Voss read the rules in a voice flat enough to iron linen. Any candidate found in possession of an unauthorized device, transmitting equipment, stored answer material, or external communication access before, during, or immediately after the examination will be disqualified and removed from all merit consideration. The phrase immediately after had not been in the rules last time. My pulse slowed. The board had learned. The papers were distributed face down. For 30 seconds, the hall became a church built for panic. Pages whispered against wood. Pens clicked. Shoes shifted. Somewhere near the front, A girl inhaled like she had forgotten oxygen existed. Serena sat 2 rows ahead and 1 column left, posture perfect, shoulders relaxed, the image of a student who had never needed help in her life. I knew her tells now. Her left hand rested too still on the desk. Her right elbow angled close to her waist. Every 6 or 7 breaths, her fingers brushed the seam of her blazer as if checking that a secret was still there. Mr. Voss walked the aisles without looking directly at anyone. Another proctor stood near the back door with a tablet in hand. Not an attendance tablet, a scanner. In my first life, I remembered hearing a faint chime during question 12 and thinking someone had dropped a pen. It must have been the moment the scanner caught a device handshake. This time, I waited for it. "Begin," Mr. Voss said. Papers flipped. The room filled with the frantic scratch of ambition. I turned my paper over and almost laughed. The first question was not the first question from my old life. The board had changed the order. Another silent protocol. Last time, question 1 had been a long constitutional interpretation problem about provincial authority. Today, question 1 was an ethics scenario about unauthorized collaboration and duty to report. Pattern disruption, delivered by the universe with a straight face. Half the hall froze for 1 heartbeat too long. Students who had memorized leaked answer sequences always froze when the world refused to begin where the leak promised. I uncapped my pen and began writing slowly, clearly, honestly, while the golden girl in front of me touched her waist for the first time. At 8:42, the first chime sounded. It was quieter than memory, a soft electronic note from the proctor's tablet, but it landed in my chest like a door closing. Mr. Voss did not stop walking. The back proctor did not move. Serena did. Her head dipped a fraction, no more than a thoughtful student considering a point, and her right hand shifted under the desk. A line appeared between her brows. The feed was supposed to be live by now. In her plan, the hidden device would receive a staggered sequence of answer prompts from outside. Not full essays, never anything so crude, just issue headings, case names, and model structures disguised as calendar reminders. She had used the method for years because it let her remain plausibly brilliant.
No identical sentences. No habeas corpus.
Just everyone in her circle suddenly remembering the same obscure authority at the same time. In my first life, she had needed my phone signature because the feed server authenticated devices through rotating student IDs. She borrowed my phone the night before, cloned enough data to make the system think some transmissions came from me, then let the board find my name in the logs after the exam. Today, my phone was sealed before collection began. The clone would reach for my device token and hit a wall. I imagined the server blinking, searching, failing, and then routing everything through the real devices still hidden in the room. Serena touched her waist again. Across the hall, Jess's face had gone pale. Mara coughed twice, a signal from the old study circle. Talia wrote nothing for 3 full minutes. The feed was not feeding. It was exposing. I answered the ethics scenario with the care of someone writing a confession for someone else to sign. Duty to preserve examination integrity. Possession versus use. Inference from concealment. Aggravating factors when misconduct is coordinated. I wrote that institutions often fail when they punish the easiest suspect rather than tracing the benefit of the misconduct. I wrote that silence can become participation when a candidate knowingly profits from a corrupt system. I wrote until my hand hurt, not because the answer required that much, but because some sentences deserved to exist somewhere official. Halfway through the second question, a shadow fell across my desk. Mr. Voss stood beside me. For 1 terrible second, my old body remembered fear before my new mind remembered the receipt. He looked at the clear pocket of my folder, at the early surrender slip, then at my empty desk. "Continue," he said. That was all. But as he moved on, the proctor with the scanner stopped behind Serena's row. The chime sounded again. Then again. 3 soft notes, spaced evenly, like a polite machine clearing its throat before ruining lives. Serena's pen paused. She did not turn around. She knew better. If she looked, she would admit awareness. But the students who had trusted her were not trained for grace under exposure. Darius looked toward the back door. Jess's foot began bouncing. Mara pressed her wrist to her stomach as if pain had bloomed there. Talia lifted her hand, then lowered it, then lifted it again. "Water," she whispered. No one answered. Mr. Voss continued reading the room as though he had all day. The third bell of the scanner came from somewhere near the left wall. Then a fourth. Then silence thickened until even the pens seemed afraid to scratch. At 9:15, the doors opened and the National Ranking Board walked in. Not the Academy administrators. Not the friendly deputy head who always called Serena our shining example. Not the careers counselor who once told me that resilience meant accepting unfair outcomes with dignity. 3 strangers in dark suits entered hall, carrying tablets, sealed envelopes, and the kind of calm that only belongs to people with authority they do not need to announce. The lead inspector was a woman with close-cropped gray hair and red glasses. I remembered her from my first hearing. Dr. Althea Wren had been the only person in that room who looked at me like a person instead of a problem, but even she had arrived too late to save me. Today, she walked down the center aisle while every candidate pretended not to watch. Mr. Voss met her near the front. They spoke quietly. Serena's shoulders dropped half an inch, then rose again. She still believed this could be managed. Her father had managed worse. Teachers had rewritten worse. Committees had softened worse. The Golden Girl had spent her whole life mistaking protection for innocence. Dr. Wren looked at the scanner tablet, then at the seating chart, then at the collection trays. Her finger moved over the records. I saw the exact moment she reached my early surrender entry. She glanced toward C-22. Our eyes met. I did not plead. Pleading had killed me once. I simply lowered my gaze to my paper and kept writing. 10 minutes later, the inspectors began removing candidates one by one. Quietly. Efficiently.
No shouting.
No public accusation. Just a hand on a desk, a whispered instruction, a paper turned face down, a chair scraping backward, and another student walking out with blood draining from their face. Jessop first. Then Mara. Then 2 boys from the scholarship block. Then Darius, who looked at me as he passed with apology already forming in his eyes. I did not receive it. Apologies are another kind of theft when offered after the damage is done. Serena was not removed immediately, which made the room more frightened. People expect leaders to fall first in stories. Institutions know better. They remove the outer circle, secure testimony, preserve the center until the pattern cannot deny itself. Serena kept writing. I admired that, against my will. Her handwriting remained elegant even while her kingdom emptied around her. She was building an alibi in real time, filling pages with original answers she hoped would prove she had not needed the feed. In another life, it might have worked.
She was not stupid.
That had always been the worst part. If she had been talentless, if she had cheated because she had nothing, I could have hated her simply. But Serena had ability. She could have ranked honestly. Maybe not first, maybe not untouchable, maybe not golden enough for the shrine her parents had built around her, but she could have survived on her own mind. Instead, she had chosen certainty over integrity, worship over work, and when someone like that falls, they never believe the ground is real. At 10:03, Dr. Wren stopped beside her desk. Serena looked up with a perfect expression of startled concern. Is something wrong? She whispered, loud enough for nearby candidates to hear. Dr. Wren placed a sealed evidence marker on the corner of Serena's desk. Candidate Vale, please stand and accompany us. Serena's face did not change. Only her fingers tightened around the pen. May I ask why? You may ask outside. I am the middle of my paper. Your paper is suspended. The word suspended moved through hall A like cold water under a door. Serena stood slowly. As she did, something beneath her blazer gave the faintest buzz. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one trap vibration against fabric. Dr. Wren's eyes lowered. Serena's hand flew to her waist, then stopped halfway when she realized everyone had seen. For the first time in both my lives, the Golden Girl had no graceful movement left. They found the device in the side seam of her skirt, sewn into a narrow pocket with skin-colored thread. The search did not happen in front of us. but sound travels strangely in examination halls. We heard the corridor door open. We heard Serena say, "That is a medical tracker." We heard Dr. Wren say, "Then your physician can explain why it is receiving encrypted prompt packets from an answer distribution server." We heard nothing after that because the door closed. My pen hovered above question 4. Around me, students wrote faster, as if speed could prove innocence, as if ink could build walls between them and the devices still warm in their clothes. I finished the paper with a calm so sharp it almost hurt. When the final bell rang, we were instructed to remain seated. Papers were collected in silence. No one whispered. No one stretched. No one made the usual jokes about dying from stress. The front tray filled with answer booklets from students whose names would survive the day. The side tray filled with sealed packets from students whose futures had just become exhibits. When Mr. Voss reached my desk, he collected my paper and paused. "You surrendered early," he said quietly. It was not a question. "Yes, sir."
Why?
I thought about my first life, about my aunt selling her wedding jewelry to pay for an appeal that no one read carefully, about Serena crying on television and saying she hoped I found peace after making such a terrible mistake, about the merit list hanging in the academy hall with her name at the top and mine nowhere, a ghost erased before death. Then I looked at the empty space where my phone should have been and said, "Because rules only protect you if you make them visible." Mr. Voss's expression shifted, not into warmth, exactly, but into something less flat. He nodded once and moved on. We were not released after the exam. That was when the real fear began. Cheaters prepare for being caught during the act. They do not prepare for waiting. We sat in Hall A for 47 minutes while inspectors compared logs, collection records, seating charts, and the silent audit map. The students who had been removed did not return. Through the high windows, sunlight moved across the floor in pale rectangles, touching shoes, chair legs, discarded pencil shavings, and the gold crest printed at the top of every desk. My stomach growled once, loudly enough that the girl beside me startled. I almost laughed. Bodies remain practical even during revenge. At 11:32, Dr. Wren returned without Serena. Her red glasses caught the light. She stood at the front of the hall and spoke without a microphone. "Candidates, the National Ranking Board has identified unauthorized communication devices and external answer feed access associated with multiple candidates in this examination session. Those candidates have been removed. Additional review will continue after dismissal. Candidates whose device surrender records, seating records, and signal profiles show no irregularity will remain eligible pending standard marking." She did not name anyone. She did not need to. Every absence was a name. Every empty desk was an accusation. Then her gaze moved to the collection table. Any candidate who still possesses an undisclosed device should understand that voluntary disclosure at this stage will be considered differently from discovery during exit scanning. 3 hands rose. Then 2 more. Then, slowly, like weeds after rain, 7 students stood and produced phones from impossible places.
Socks.
Waistbands. A pencil case lining. One from inside a sanitary pad wrapper, which made the room inhale and look away. None of them were Serena. Serena had already gone past voluntary. By noon, the Academy's perfect exam day had become a controlled evacuation. We left 1 row at a time, passing exit scanners under the eyes of board inspectors. Parents crowded beyond the glass doors, confused by the delay, angrier at inconvenience than misconduct because parents of ambitious children often treat rules like weather, unfortunate when harsh, irrelevant when sunny. My aunt was not there. In my first life, she had come early with a lunchbox and a nervous smile, then collapsed against a pillar when they told her I had been removed for cheating. In this life, I had begged her not to come. She thought I was being cold. I told her I needed to feel independent. The truth was simpler. I did not want Serena's family to see anyone who loved me before the trap closed. Love gives enemies targets. Outside, the Academy courtyard buzzed with rumors already growing extra limbs. Serena had fainted. Serena had been framed. Serena had exposed a ring. Serena had sacrificed herself to protect weaker students. People began rewriting her downfall before the evidence was even cold. That was how Golden Girl survived, not by staying spotless, but by making others desperate to polish the stains. I walked past the fountain, carbon receipt still in my folder, and found a bench beneath the old plane tree where fallen leaves stuck to the wet stone like small brown hands. My phone was returned to me in its sealed pouch at 12:18. The seal was intact. The log showed no activity. The clone token Serena had used in my first life had failed because the original device had been offline, sealed, and witnessed before the network scan began. I held the pouch in both hands and felt something inside me unclench that had been tight across 2 lifetimes. Serena's mother found me before lunch.
Of course she did.
Mrs. Vale moved through panic like a ship through fog, elegant, expensive, and certain the sea would make way. She wore cream silk and pearls, which was either arrogance or poor costume choice for a public scandal. 2 academy administrators followed her at a useless distance, murmuring about process and privacy. Mrs. Vale stopped in front of my bench and looked down at me with the same smile Serena had inherited and sharpened. "Leora," she said, as if my name tasted unpleasant but necessary. "We need to speak." "No," I said. The administrators blinked. Mrs. Vale's smile thinned. "This concerns Serena. Then you should speak to the board. My daughter tells me you behaved strangely before the exam." There it was. The first stone thrown toward a new story. Strange girl. Jealous girl. Scholarship girl. Girl who surrendered early because she knew something, because she planned something, because her innocence itself was suspicious. In my first life, I would have stood, bowed my head, tried to explain, tried to be reasonable in the face of someone who only respected power. This time, I remained seated. I followed the rules in front of witnesses. "You made a spectacle of yourself. Your daughter wore a hidden device into a national examination." The words landed harder than I expected. One administrator made a small choking sound. Mrs. Vale's eyes flashed. "Be careful." I said, lifting the sealed pouch slightly. For the first time. She looked at the evidence bag, then at the receipt in my folder, and I saw calculation run behind her eyes. She could not attack the record yet. Not here, not with administrators present, not while the board still held Serena. So she changed tactics. Her voice softened. "You and Serena have been close for years. If there was a misunderstanding, you could help clarify it." I smiled then, not kindly. I clarified my part at 7:58. The official announcement came at 4:40 p.m., pinned first to the National Ranking Board portal and then, after a frantic delay, to Halewick Academy's own website. Due to verified examination integrity breaches, 31 candidates from Center HA were removed from merit consideration pending disciplinary review. By 5:05, pending became a word people clung to like driftwood. By 6:30, parents had gathered outside the administration building demanding transparency, mercy, context, anything except accountability. At 7:12, an anonymous account leaked the list of removed candidates and the school group chats detonated.
Serena Valley.
Jessa Lynn. Mara Cote.
Talia Venn.
Darius Fun. 31 names in total, 24 from Serena's private study circle, 7 who had panicked and disclosed devices after the announcement. Mine was not there. For several minutes, no one knew what to do with my absence from the scandal. Then the messages began. "Leora, are you okay? Leora, did you know? Leora, they're saying Serena used your device ID. Leora, please answer. Leora, this is serious." The same people who once watched me drown now knocked on my screen with wet hands, hoping I would become a lifeboat. I did not reply. I sat at my desk with my phone plugged into a wall charger, the sealed pouch cut open beside me, and watched the ranking portal refresh. My candidate status changed from under standard review to eligible for marking. Not cleared yet. Not victorious. Institutions move slowly even when they are right. But eligible was a word I had died without hearing. I pressed my hand over my mouth, not to stop myself from crying, but to keep the sound from becoming too large for my room. By Friday, the first hearing summaries reached the academy. The board did not release full evidence to students, but enough leaked through parent lawyers and staff whispers to build the shape of the crime. Serena's hidden device had been connected to an encrypted answer feed hosted off-site. Several candidates possessed receiver apps disguised as schedule widgets. The feed attempted to authenticate using multiple candidate profiles, including mine, but my original device's early surrender record, powered off seal, and network absence invalidated the clone. The false token did not save Serena. It identified her. Every prompt packet routed through her device after my token failed. Every candidate who connected to her feed carried matching timestamps. Every student who kept a phone became a glowing in the audit map. The class that kept theirs was scrubbed from the provisional list before marking finished. Not lowered, not warned, scrubbed. Their names disappeared from the portal as if someone had dragged a cloth across wet ink. Parents called it excessive. Students called it cruel. Teachers called it heartbreaking. I called it accurate. On Friday afternoon, Mr. Voss found me outside the library and handed me a formal letter in a board envelope. "Your eligibility has been confirmed," he said. "Your paper will be marked with the unaffected candidate pool." I took the letter, read the first line, and forced myself not to fold around it. "Thank you." He hesitated. "Miss Arden, did you know this would happen?" It was the first dangerous question anyone had asked me directly. I looked through the library window at the reflection of a girl who had lived twice and learned that truth without proof was just another way to be punished. "I knew I did not want anyone touching my phone," I said. Mr. Voss studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Sensible. Sensible. Such a small word for resurrection. Serena was let out of the academy the following Monday, not in cuffs, not screaming, not dragged like villains are in cheap stories, but walking between her parents and two board officials with her chin lifted so high it looked painful. That was worse for her. A dramatic collapse would have given people something emotional to forgive. Dignity gave them time to stare. The courtyard filled before first period despite staff ordering everyone inside. Serena's cream ribbon was gone. Her hair hung loose around her face. Her mother wore black this time. Her father spoke into his phone with the furious helplessness of a man discovering money could delay consequences, but not always erase them. I stood near the west staircase, half hidden behind the notice board where next month's debate tryouts were posted. I had told myself I did not need to watch. I had told myself revenge was complete when the portal changed, when my eligibility returned, when her name vanished from the list. But some wounds want witnesses. Serena saw me just before she reached the gate. For 1 second, the courtyard, the officials, the whispers, the ruined parents, the whole machinery of consequence seemed to fall away, and we were only two girls looking at the distance between what we had been and what we had chosen. Her face twisted, not with regret, but with accusation. As if I had betrayed an agreement by refusing to be useful. As if handing my phone to the proctor had been an act of violence against her. She mouthed something. I could not hear it, but I knew the shape of the words. "You knew." I did not deny it. I lifted my carbon receipt from my folder, just enough for her to see the pale yellow slip that had cut her plan open before the first bell. Then I slid it back into place and turned away before she reached the gate. The old me would have waited for an apology. The new me understood that some people only apologize to doors after they close. The final merit list was published 3 weeks later under a sky so bright it made the academy windows look newly washed.
No ceremony.
No brass band. No headmaster wiping tears for donors. Just a digital board in the main hall, a crowd of students holding their breath, and my name appearing in the 8th position statewide. 8th. Not first. Not mythic. Not the kind of rank that makes newspapers call you a prodigy. But honest.
Mine.
Earned with a pen, a sealed phone, and a second life I refused to waste on begging corrupt people to become fair. For a moment, I stared at Leora Arden until the letters blurred. Then I heard someone behind me whisper, "She only ranked because Serena was removed." I turned. The girl who said it flinched, already regretting that I had heard. In my first life, I would have swallowed the insult. This time, I stepped closer and spoke clearly enough for the nearest students to hear.
No.
I ranked because I sat the exam without a hidden device. Serena was removed because she did not. The girl looked away. The sentence settled over the crowd like a new rule.
Clean.
Unpretty.
Difficult to bend.
I walked out of the hall before anyone could congratulate me for surviving what they had allowed. In the courtyard, my aunt waited beside the fountain with a paper bag of warm chestnut buns, crying so hard she forgot to pretend she was not crying. I let her crush me in a hug. For once, I did not feel embarrassed by love in public. Across the campus, the old science wing Serena's father had funded stood with its gold plaque still shining beside the door. The academy had not removed it yet. Institutions hate admitting how much rot they polished. But below the plaque, someone had taped a printed copy of the board's integrity notice.
Non autorisé de vices.
No external feeds. No candidate is above review. I laughed when I saw it, not because it was funny, but because the universe sometimes has terrible handwriting and perfect timing. Years later, people would ask me when my life truly changed. They expected me to say it was the day I came back, or the day Serena was removed, or the day my name appeared on the merit list where it should have been all along. But rebirth did not change me. Revenge did not change me. Even justice, when it finally arrived limping and late, did not change me as much as one small decision in a corridor full of liars. I changed when I stopped waiting for innocence to be recognized and started making it undeniable. I changed when I understood that being good is not the same as being unprotected, that kindness is not the same as access, and that rules are only weapons for the powerful if the powerless are trained to ignore procedure out of shame. So no, I did not expose Serena with a speech. I did not scream in the hall. I did not hack the feed, plant evidence, steal her device, or beg the board to believe me. I handed my phone to the proctor first. I asked for a timestamp. I kept the receipt. Then I sat down, opened my paper, and let everyone who thought rules were for other people hold onto the devices that would erase them. In my first life, they scrubbed my name from the list and called it integrity. In my second, the list scrubbed itself clean.